the panelists introduce themselves. I will start. My name is James Young, founder of a project called Collabland. And
Awesome. Hey, everybody. My name is Sydney Lai. I am the CTO and co-founder of Gaia.
Hey guys, my name is Julian Butulu. I'm the founder and CEO of Stake Capital. We do investment, we have a venture studio, and we also participate and build some projects in the DeFi space, in the blockchain space.
Hey, I'm Vias, founder of Neura. We're a payments and insurance layer for AI, formerly the first employee at Eigen. Yeah, lovely to be here.
Hello. It's kind of hard to hear you guys over there, so. I'm Billy. I am the founder and CEO of Intuition, and our goal is to give people and machines better intuition in all of their interactions by giving them the data they need.
amazing. Thank you, everyone. All right. So I'll start off with Sydney. With Gaia, how does your platform emphasize decentralized AI, and how does staking mechanisms ensure that the GPU providers and data contributors stay honest?
So I think there's a lot of conversations about how does token economics work in the AI Web3 space. One of our very bold opinions is that we are looking at a staking model for participants on the network to be able to validate their own data and also be able to validate their own hardware. One of the reasons why this is bold is because a lot of AI projects are looking at TEE, and TEE requires a lot of specific types of hardware and a lot of types of hardware to be able to scale those types of securitized transactions. And because of that, TEE is one of the reasons why we haven't gone down that route yet, because we actually believe that it requires a nuanced tokenized model to be able to handle nuanced AI, whereas TEE really is able to handle binary types of AI applications.
Awesome. Excellent. Julian, how do you see token economics evolving to better align interests?
Yeah, so my background is actually machine learning, and I spent quite a significant amount of time in building some algorithm back in 2010, 15 years ago. We didn't have game theory back then. I think what's interesting in the AI and crypto, especially in the tokenomics, is the fact that you can actually use staking to either incentivize good weight, so building LM, but you need FHE or ZK or new type of technology in order to not reveal the weight in order to train new models. And this is the way you can actually incentivize the correctness of the verifiable data in order to get better data or to get better weighting for training more models, or to get more better data. And this is the way you can actually build really good tokenomics around that. Slashing mechanism, if your model that you're using is either hallucinating, for example, you get penalized, or the data you're providing, you also get penalized. I think it's not really complicated to get good tokenomics around data, to verify the data accuracy. I think it can be done, yeah.
Awesome. Excellent. Bias. Tell us a little bit more about Neura AI, and what do you think about the economic alignment incentives and what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like they both touch on like really important aspects where you need these systems to be somewhat, operating in like self-functioning mechanisms, right? We're trying to build like these systems that can handle themselves, and so like I look at the agent supply chain as like kind of like three different components, right? There's the compute layer, which like involves GPUs, FHEs, TEs, etc. There's also like, it's the Oracle layer, but to me it's like the data layer, like Julian just said, where it's like you need some sort of actionable information for the agent to execute on. That's really important. I think like you can build like really robust, crypto economic conditions around each actor in the supply chain, build like proof mechanisms to see who's behaving correctly. That's kind of what we're working on, in addition to like a payments and insurance layer to underwrite like some of the actions of these AI models. I think the most important thing is like coming down to more like consumer-driven use cases. Like we're kind of playing this game of like training models further and further, where like I'll give you a simple example of ZKTLS or like TEs being really useful. I came home one night to my room in my apartment, slightly inebriated. It was like 3 a.m. and my door was locked to my bedroom, right? So I started using ChatGPT to like understand how to like pick the lock I took apart the doorknob. I refuse to sleep on my couch. Like, I'm trying to get in my bedroom. And ChatGPT refuses to answer because it thinks you're trying to break and enter. But if I could zk-TLS or prove that I live in that apartment, I pay utility bills there, it should help me, right? Like, these are like real consumer-driven use cases where like we could zk-TLS some of our attributes and like LLMs could actually start incorporating like useful feedback into our lives. But if we just keep playing this game of like, oh, we're going to train these models more and more efficiently, like we're still going to keep missing the plot of like, oh, every cycle will build more and more infra and like the users will come one day. Like agents are the way we're going to get users, and like if we don't start thinking about it from this paradigm, like yeah, I'm not super optimistic about the design space inherently.
Billy, what do you think about intuition and how economic incentives through intuition, maybe explain intuition briefly, and then how do you imagine the economic incentives evolving, specifically with intuition and in the context of an AI use case?
Yeah, absolutely. So where we play is kind of at the Oracle layer that Vyas was mentioning, kind of the data layer. So if you think about kind of this conscious internet that is emerging, like you need kind of the substrate of the conscious internet that allows these things to communicate with one another. And in order for things to communicate with one another, they need to speak the same language. And so we have really interesting crypto economic principles in crypto that are allowing us to come to consensus on the state of a world computer or a ledger. But when we use that world computer, we're still speaking different languages. And so even though composability and interoperability is the superpower, things aren't really maximally composable unless you have standards. And when one standard emerges, you get ERC20, and then a whole ecosystem emerges, and then you get 721, and an ecosystem emerges. So what if we applied crypto economic mechanics to like the state of the systems, and we incentivize people to come to social consensus on the language that we speak, like the semantics of the data. So instead of coming together in a standards committee, what if we incentivize convergence on data standards through economics, where the economically optimal choice is the one that is what the social consensus has decided is the way that we should structure the data. And I think once we do that, then you get intuition, because you can just very easily understand what things are because you're all speaking the same language, and then you have a bunch of data about everything, and you just unlock this very seamless flow where agents are interoperating with one another. It's like user to agent, agent to agent, agent to platform, user to platform. All those things, you need data about each thing that is in that kind of supply chain.
I actually want to talk on Billy's passion about this, because I think a lot of times people forget why AI or why AI Web3 even needs tokenomics. And the reason is because the next biggest consumer of blockchain is going to be AI applications. Blockchain is written by code, AI is written by code. For the last 10 years, we have seen humans try to interact, and there's a lot of consumer frustration, right, in the front end. And so not only that, but also the next biggest consumer of blockchain is also the data itself, right? So AI is able to process that data beyond far, at a much faster throughput than humans can. So I see your passion, and I just really want to remind everyone why we truly believe the marriage between Web3 and AI is because, again, AI will be the next biggest consumer of blockchain.
I think we can even double down on that, right? Like, there's also this beautiful idea of potentially, intuitions providing faster finality from the Oracle layer. So now, like, you're dealing with execution at a faster rate and you're reducing latency, right? Because you need the data layer, whether it's an Oracle or like whether it's Web 2 data, whatever you're trying to do, to go to the model, generate an inference, and then the agent acts upon said inference, right? And so it's like, if you can provide faster intuitive data, then you can provide faster execution, right? It's gonna be this like, as long as the GPU networks are properly like scheduling their, like at a kernel level, they're properly scheduling what's happening from an early exit standpoint for determinism. But that's a whole different like can of worms.
Yeah, and I think it's efficiency, but it's also kind of personalization. But personalization at every layer. So when I go to interact with an agent, I want it to have like my intuition, so it can personalize kind of its responses to me when it goes to book a restaurant reservation. And then when that request goes out, you're going to have these agentic swarms that are all coordinating. Which agent does that request get routed to? Now you need agent reputation and agent data. And then that agent goes to interact with a platform. which platform does it use to book the restaurant or to do the swap or whatever? Like now you need platform reputation. So you kind of need this like interconnected web of data that's very easily traversable. So you have like good intuition about all those things so that flow can happen seamlessly.
It's not inherently clear that we need reputation if there's enough economic security at stake.
True.
Like those two things, like they get messy together when you like couple them. It might be more like again, we're talking about an open design space, so like there's going to be multiple different options of how people execute on this. But I think like there's going to be coupled models where you see reputation and stake, and then there's going to be very decoupled models where it's just like, hey, like you're liable for every single action, and here's the like underwriting of said action, and that's the risk that you're taking on.
Absolutely, I 100% agree. And I think they kind of like you can take. Reputation is one word you could use to describe it. It's also kind of like the interface layer. It's like how should I interact with this thing? How should I interact with this person? How should I interact with this agent? How should I interact? Maybe it's not even the thing that slashes you. Like maybe instead of your reputation getting slashed, you're economically getting slashed. But you still need data to like be able to communicate. It's like the communication layer.
I think all of this comes down to the context layer as well, which is why when you were talking about your frustration with ChatGPT, it was missing context. If you're Venmoing a friend, you're putting context as to why you're even Venmoing that friend. And I think being able to automate a lot of these workflows requires actually quite a bit of context and nuance. And so even for us, like coming from Gaia, our whole framework is about being able to pull up the right context for what your agent business needs. We're not necessarily an agent launcher. So for example, if you build your application with Eliza, we'll help you decentralize it, contextualize it, and then also pull the right verticalized LLMs to kind of be the brain of that. Yeah.
I'm going to put Julian on the spot a little bit. So do you think, based off of this conversation, can economic incentives, are economic incentives required to help solve alignment?
Well, I think if you don't have alignment of incentives, you cannot really coordinate those AI agents to accomplish tasks on your behalf and also to be able to communicate between each others. But you need, I think the key in crypto AI or AI, it's the fact that you can verify the data. I think that's the holy grail of training new models and also using interference for new models. So the fact that you can guarantee the data you're providing to models or you're training them can actually be entirely verified. And this is something that I think the person who's going to solve this problem is going to be the one driving the AI bull run in the crypto space.
So verification is key. And
I think
required.
verification is everything. Especially right now, like for example, ChatGPT or Anthropic, they are reaching a phase where they are saying that it's extremely difficult to tap into accurate, verifiable data, because then you start having models that start hallucinating. And also when you pull or feed those LLM with new data, you can start actually polluting those type of training. So I think if I was a big competitor in the space of machine learning, like I would try to interact with bad data into those LLM, and it's potentially a business where people are starting to do that.
To kind of poison the training
Poison,
data.
yeah. And in distributed training with distributed computing, I think it will be extremely difficult for crypto AI projects to actually come up with extremely good AI models because of that problem of verifiable data.
That's a good point.
The incentive alignment that you need to come up with in order to make sure that the data you having access to, as to the cost to have access to extremely good data will be going exponential in coming years, I feel like, yeah.
I think there's a couple of other like interesting aspects there, right? Like the data aspect is like incredibly important, and having verified data is like almost a prerequisite. But then there's also like holding each actor accountable. Like if the agent builder executes on something incorrectly, we need to hold them accountable. If the compute network doesn't like provide inference within a 12-second latency, we need to hold them accountable, right? So like there's different layers of accountability that like crypto economics provides. I think like there's another thing of like the macroeconomic trend that we need to be thinking about, which is the whole category of decentralized compute is introducing smaller and smaller units of compute, introducing economies of scale and driving compute down, right? That's the whole purpose of the asset class. And so like as we're building out AI agents, we're also dealing with like the cost of compute being like a downward trajectory, a race to the bottom as compute providers compete, right? And so like we're dealing with already a macroeconomic trend. We need to build crypto economic standards to like make sure people aren't cheaping out on their way to the race to the bottom in terms of compute. And so like liable parties need to be held accountable.
Yeah, we're at time, and I feel like we're just warming up.
One more.
Okay, one real quick, and then we'll end.
I think verifiability is like a really, like, it's very important, but like, okay, let's say, I can verifiably prove that the data was generated from my device at this point in time. Like, even though the data is, we can verify that it's quote unquote legitimate, is it good? Do I want that data from that person? And so I think reputation has a big role to play in all of that, where it's like, whose data do I actually want? Even, okay, everyone's producing all this verifiable data, but what do I want to tap into based on like, because if you start to containers and you say deterministically, hey, this is good data and this is bad data, that gets dangerous, because then you start censoring.
We're just now getting to the juicy stuff, but here we're going to end. Thank you so much, everyone. Round of applause to the panel.